Welcome to the First Gen Chronicles. I'm your host, Sasha Funes. Today, I'm talking to Norma Martinez, a former high school soccer teammate of mine and now a first generation student athlete about to graduate with her bachelor's degree right now in May. Let's get started. Norma, first question. What background do your parents have in college?
So my parents, they actually don't have any background in college or honestly any higher education. The most both parents got to was about middle school. If I remember correctly, my dad was able to do freshman year of high school, but as he was living in Mexico, a small town in Oaxaca, he was unable to be able to continue pursuing his high school degree or high school diploma just because of like the necessity that was there. So both parents did not attend college.
Got it. And what was your motivation to go to college?
I think the motivation was, I guess, that in fact, that my parents weren't able to pursue their education. Growing up, I had many conversations with both of my parents about not only what I wanted to do when I got older, but also kind of what they wanted to do. And one moment that sticks out like really, really vividly to me is when I asked my mom what she would have studied if she had the opportunity. And she told me that she would have loved to be some sort of nurse, doctor in the medical field, particularly just to help people in her town because her town in Oaxaca is very under resourced. It's very hard to kind of grow and develop there. So I kind of felt it in me when she said that. And kind of moving forward, I was like, well, as an immigrant myself, I never had to sacrifice the way that my immigrant parents did because I was brought here at such a young age. I was 8 months when I arrived to the United States. So honestly, in a way, like I know nothing about Mexico the way that I do the United States.
Mhm.
And so being given the opportunity to further my education past high school, it just seemed like such a privilege to me that I could not take for granted. So my biggest motivation was making my parents sacrifice not only of crossing the border, but the sacrifice of not even being able to pursue a high school education back in their own home country.
Got it. So, what are some challenges you faced as a first generation student?
I think the biggest challenge that I have faced as a first generation student would be, I guess they call it like imposter syndrome. I'm the youngest of three siblings. We're three daughters. And both my sisters are American citizens. I'm the only one who's undocumented. Parents tried to go back for their wedding, and then my mom found out she was pregnant, tried to come back. So it's confusing. But so both my sisters are American citizens, and both of them did try to pursue a bachelor's at a four-year institution, but both of them were unable to actually complete it. And so I feel that given the opportunity that I guess they support because both of them have found financial stability in working in retail jobs without a college diploma. And because of their ability to do that, as well as my mom's, I've been given the privilege of not having to worry about having a part time job or any regular job, like in any years of my education. So when I'm faced in multiple opportunities of being flown out to attend convenings, to attend like national conventions such as NCTM. I'm filled with like predominantly white dominated areas, and I get a sense of, I guess, that I don't belong
Mhm.
and kind of like my worth. But like the answer to that challenge is just that I'm like the first person in my family to do that, and everyone that's coming to follow after me will be given that privilege because of the work that I'm doing right now. But it's definitely a challenge to navigate as I'm put in these situations especially as I approach an actual career field outside of an internship and more of a job like position.
When you do face these challenges of imposter syndrome, etc., what helps provide solace? You did say like you're the first in your family to completely go all the way. So like you I'm sure like you have no one in your family to lean on for guidance and stuff. So, what do you do in those challenges?
I feel like I do find some ways to lean on my family. My sisters are honestly like my best friends. So we do share a lot of our emotions and especially like our times of being vulnerable. And although they don't really have experience being in the fields that I have been in, they help validate my worth as a person rather than as a researcher, as a psychologist, and just remind me that at the end of the day, it just matters what I know and what I can do, especially coming from my background. A lot of the places that I have been put in, it's kind of building and researching on minorities, on low income neighborhoods, marginalized communities. And sometimes when I feel like I don't belong, they're the ones to remind me that maybe there's portions where I actually don't belong, but there's a reason why I'm there, and there's a reason why that seat was saved for me at that table. So their support and their validation, I think, is what helps push me through and kind of steers me away from feeling like an imposter.
That's that's actually pretty adorable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. What's your major?
So I'm studying psychology. That's what I'm getting my bachelor's in,
Mm.
but I have an emphasis on research and on cognitive psychology.
Okay. Did you share your mother's story earlier? Like her, how they're underprivileged in her town in Oaxaca?
Mhm.
Did her story and stories like that have an impact on the major you chose?
In a way, yes, but I didn't notice it until I got further into the field. So originally, I selected psychology because I wanted to go into sports psych. I wanted to be a coach.
Mm.
But then as I kept taking classes and I started getting into internships, a lot of my internships surrounded education for lower income schools and lower income cities.
Mhm.
And I realized how it was always Hispanic students, it was always African American students that were being essentially oppressed by their learning. And I kind of started connecting it to my own life. And I realized how not only did my mom not have the opportunity herself, but I still have cousins back in our town who have like they're going through the same things that my mom once did, where they don't give education the same significance that we do,
Mhm.
being in a different location. And seeing that my mom once had that goal, but now my cousins who are in a place where we can support them, but their mindset is entirely different. And instead of having goals, it's so normalized for them not to pursue education.
Yeah.
So that comparison in between my mom wanting to, but not having the resources versus now my family, they're having the resources, but not wanting to was kind of like a wake up call that a lot of our communities need help. And maybe I can be the one that that starts the research on it.
Okay. Now I'm gonna transition into your sports real quick. You do cross country here, or do you do cross country and track?
I do cross country and track and field.
Okay. How did I know you've been running since high school, obviously.
Yes.
Did you start getting into cross and track before that? Or was it in high school? How did you get into it? Just running.
Mhm. So I always think it's a funny story how I got into running because, as you know, I played soccer in high school.
Mhm.
And particularly in my sophomore year, towards the end of soccer season, I had kind of been thinking about doing track. A couple of us were always questioning whether we wanted to join or not join. And I honestly went in with the intentions of joining track to be a sprinter, just because I thought I needed like to be faster for soccer.
Mhm.
But I met Coach Ambrose, who encouraged me to do the 800 and the mile. And after my season there, I kind of took it as maybe I should do cross country to stay in shape for soccer.
Got it.
But throughout that summer, I found myself constantly going to practice, not missing a single day, and just wanting to get better. And at the end of that summer, I had my first race, and I think that's what changed everything, where I went from wanting to run to stay in shape for soccer and to be better at soccer. And then I had the realization that I actually just liked running.
Mhm.
And in my first race, I believe I came in sixth place as my first race. So not only did I come in a pretty good place, but I had medaled my first race. And I was like, whoa, I was like, that's insane. So it was like a really great start for me that eventually soccer just didn't really have the connection to running anymore. And my goals became more directed towards wanting to be better at running.
Got it. That's so interesting,
Mhm.
actually.
Yeah, I just steered away from soccer entirely.
Yeah, I like
Mhm.
I noticed you were here, right? Yeah, I've seen the soccer team, but yeah, I never saw you there. But yeah, I think I'd seen you in your track uniform or something, or on
Yeah.
the roster or something. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
okay. Uh,
Yeah.
it's so funny. I had the opposite feeling. I just hated running and I only did it
Mhm.
for soccer.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were like that. There were very few that enjoyed the running.
Yeah. Okay. Now, like you said, you're a pretty good runner. From the beginning, you got medals, etc. Did you ever feel after that track and or cross country could be your ticket to college?
Yeah. So I had that realization a little after I was already in college. So prior to committing to any school,
Mhm,
I had quit for a couple of weeks actually. It was the middle of the pandemic and I it was my senior year of high school.
mhm,
And I remember we did not get cleared, and it was so difficult to try to see if any sport was going to have a season.
mhm,
And I kind of just felt hopeless. And I was like, I was like, what's the point of saying I'm on the team? Like, I'm quitting. I'm never running again.
mhm,
I was really upset. So I did go through a couple of weeks during my senior year where I wasn't running, I wasn't training.
mhm,
And Coach Ambrose encouraged me to slowly get back into it for myself and just to kind of get ready for track season, just with the possibility that we might have a season. And he was right. We did have a season. And during that season, I ended up meeting an old alumni from my high school,
mhm,
from Brainstein, and who had actually gone to Glendale Community College. And we ended up, it was really random interaction. She happened to be on the track and she reached out to me and she let me know that Glenda was actually recruiting distance runners for the cross country season.
mhm,
And so Coach Ambrose, who was my coach at Bernstein, he encouraged me to reach out, meet the girls, meet the coaches, see the school. And I really wasn't sure where I wanted to go to college, whether I wanted to go far, close, or anything. So it seemed like Glenda was a really good choice for me.
mhm,
So once I got there, not only did I not know community colleges had sports, but I didn't realize how the transferring was like any of that process. So when I got there, a lot of the girls and a lot of alumni had actually talked and they were telling us about how their effort and their progress and a lot of them became better runners while being at the Glendale Community College program
mhm.
to the point where they had received scholarship offers from schools.
Got it.
And I wasn't really sure how that worked, but hearing them saying that they go to like Cal State Long Beach, UC Riverside on scholarship, it made me realize that that could be a possibility for me. And so that was kind of like, I was like, oh, like that's my ticket to college, right? That's my ticket to transfer.
Mhm.
So that became my goal to transfer to a program that was going to allow me to further my academic career while still focusing on becoming a better runner.
Okay. Now, are you still undocumented?
So currently, I'm under a program that's called SIGIS. It's the Special Juvenile, I believe it's immigrant status. I might be wrong with that. It's a really tricky name. But so what that program is that it grants me a work permit. and it's a potential pathway to a citizenship.
Mhm.
So currently, I'm still undocumented. I don't have any current pathway to citizenship, but I do hold the ability to work in the United States.
Okay.
Mhm.
When it came to applying to colleges, how was your because you can't apply on FAFSA, you have to do Dreamers, right?
Mhm.
So how was that process for you?
So that process, honestly, so the reason why it was different when it came to applying for community college versus a four-year institution
Mm.
was that it kind of seemed very basic going into community college. And I didn't know this, but you actually get 2 years free going to a California community college. And so I didn't have to deal with any sort of verification, anything.
Mhm.
So it was a breeze. But when I got to transferring to a four-year institution, I had to look at things more carefully. I had to see kind of where the money was coming from, whether it was going to be enough, and especially because I had gotten selected for verification and I had no idea what that was. So for like the first month of school, I was going back and forth figuring that out just because I wasn't sure how I was supposed to verify my income because at the time, I still did not have a work permit. So and I know I don't file under my mom's taxes, so it was a really confusing process because I didn't have a Social Security. I only had my form of identifications from Mexico.
Mhm.
So it was more confusing than scary, and yeah, kinda just more along those lines.
Got it. When it came time for you to look at universities, were there any financial, maybe things you had to consider family wise?
Yes, so I guess the biggest challenge was kinda making sure that my family was going to be okay, like financially stable. I kind of knew that I wanted to go to a college where I could live on campus or at least be in closer proximity because I wanted to run at the college. And being in a program, typically programs like to train earlier in the morning for distance runners.
Mhm.
So I knew that if I decided on a school and they had like early practice, it was going to be necessary for me to be close to the campus.
Mhm.
However, the reason why it was more difficult was because at the time of deciding, I wasn't actually helping with any bills or any portion of rent.
Mhm.
So I kind of felt some guilt of wanting to leave instead of ensuring that I could be here and maybe find some sort of job where I can help with bills. But yeah, it was more so along those lines of being worried whether I was making the right decision on going to a school and living at the school
Mhm.
or if I should stay and help my mom.
Okay. And how did you end up choosing Cal State LA?
So Cal State LA, they actually reached out to me a little late in the school year. And I say a little late because typically the recruitment process starts a little earlier with like visiting campuses, visiting teams. So it can take a little longer. But because I had looked at a few schools and financial constraints were my biggest worry,
Mhm.
I was debating whether I wanted to even continue running, whether it was worth it financially. And Coach Orientis Hutcherson, Coach O
Mhm.
from Cal State LA, reached out to me one day and he had asked me if I was interested in getting to know more about the program or like if I had any questions. And I replied and I took his offer up, had a couple phone calls with him, got some information on the school, and if I'm being honest, I had never been to Cal State LA. I kinda just knew it was one of the closest, universities to me,
Mhm.
and I briefly knew about their program. I had heard it from a couple of runners before, but I didn't know much. So, I was really transparent with him about my situation, wanting to be in close proximity, but not really being able to because I also don't drive. So, I knew that having to be close to the campus was one of the main important things, and we just stayed in connection for a long time, and I started deciding on it because I realized that even if I couldn't live on campus, it was the closest campus to my house. It's only about an hour on the bus from Hollywood. So it kind of just seemed like the most, I guess, logical. And kind of what tied the knot was when he offered me a scholarship to run for the program. And I realized that, I mean, you couldn't really reject a scholarship and an offer to run. So I was kind of getting two things at once that would benefit me. One thing that I really wanted to do, which was continue running in college,
Mhm.
and the support of having a scholarship that would provide me with monthly payments. And the payments that I would get monthly ended up paying for an apartment that I rented out nearby campus with a couple other of my teammates.
Mhm.
So, it kinda just came all together, and I feel like it fit in place as the weeks went by and, like, as discussions happened.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Mhm. Yeah.
Is it a partial scholarship or a full ride scholarship?
I'm actually not sure because my financial aid does cover my tuition and, like, my classes and all.
Mhm.
So I may be wrong, but I would say it's a partial scholarship because it doesn't cover any part of my tuition. It just kinda comes to me.
Okay.
Mhm.
And while in college, whether in GCC or here at Cal State LA, have you ever utilized any programs that are meant to support first generation students, like EOP, Summer Bridge, any other program?
I didn't do EOP or summer bridge, but while at Cal State, I mean at Glendale, I did utilize we had 2 different programs. So it was a program called, La Comunidad, and La Comunidad emphasized on helping, Latinx students, Hispanic students, and it would just provide us with our own set of counselors, and, we would get, like, priority registration. They would host workshops, events, and it was just, like, small things here and there that they helped us with. But, they even gave us, like, little treats, like gift cards, like free food and stuff. And so I did utilize that and the Dream Resource Center, which emphasized on helping undocumented students, AB 540, all those kinds of non-citizen or, legal residency students.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mhm.
And how did you feel those programs helped your journey throughout college?
I think they helped me a lot because they were people that looked like me. I have this thing where, I kinda I'm very anxious when I come to like, when it comes to talking to new people, especially about things that I constantly have questions about.
Mhm.
And, like, my education has always been something that I think I ask too many questions when it comes to making sure I'm taking the right classes, whether, like, there's something else I can do, take another class, basically anything. So, when I had access to these counselors
Mhm.
and access to the resources, I kind of felt a sense of comfort, and it was easier to connect to them and understand like, that it was always in their best interest on both ends, that they wanted to ensure my academic success while being able to understand, like, I couldn't be at school late because I didn't drive, and it was about an hour and a half from my house to get to Glendale.
Mhm.
So they understood with helping me navigate the best option of courses, ensuring that I had good professors, and just like those small things. It was always so comforting and kind of like a sense of security that I had with them.
And did that also in any way help your imposter syndrome along the way?
Yes. So Glendale it wasn't necessarily like the major population is not Hispanics at all. And I had a couple classes where like the minorities were Hispanics and maybe it was like two, three of us. And it often felt a little, I guess, scary to ask for help or even just like kind of admit that I was struggling.
Mhm.
In particular, class where that happened was calculus. So my second semester, I was supposed to take calculus, and not only was I one of the only Hispanic students in there,
Mhm.
but my teacher was white. My professor was white. And I had done horrible, like horrible. I failed the first exam, and when she gave us back our exams, she had put to go meet with her for, like, office hours and to study with her. And it scared me entirely. I was so intimidated that I kinda just ignored it, and I kinda kept studying on my own, knowing that I wasn't well prepared. I went in, took the second exam, failed it again, and this time, like, in all capital letters, her it said, like, "Come see me," and it just scared me even more. So, having those counselors when I was going through that, I went to talk to them, and I was like, "Hey, I'm honestly struggling really bad. I don't think I was ready for this class." And it was so much easier being able to tell them that I actually did not belong there, more so because I wasn't ready than to tell my professor that. And I mean, it ended up working out because it helps me in my best interest. I ended up taking pre-calc instead of calculus, and it was a great refresher. Took it. It was a lot better, a lot easier than calculus. But I think if I didn't have those access to those counselors, I honestly think I would have just stayed in the class and ended up failing it.
Okay. A couple more questions. Do you think there's anything else that could have helped support you, whether that's as a first generation student or as an athlete throughout college?
Mm, Honestly, as an athlete, I would say more information. I think I think I would have been better prepared to go into being a student athlete if I knew the possibilities of what it was like to run in community college specifically. And I note that because I think not many first generation students know that they can do that or know the possibilities of being able to reach out. And I think coming from high school, I think you may relate, like, we have such an active lifestyle where we're on campus, where, we have what it was like block schedule, but we would have essentially have 7 periods. We would play sports after, we would hang out. And I think being able to know that you can go into a college and access those resources, such as playing a sport, having La Comunidad, programs where you can build a sense of community within the college, I think it would have been a little easier to transition.
Okay.
And I think those programs are there, but just the outreach isn't fully there for all students.
Got it. Okay, okay. Final question.
Mhm.
What is a piece of advice you have for a first generation student athlete?
So I love this question because there's so many things that you can really tell student, like first generation student athletes. One of the things that I am constantly reminded as to myself is that it's really important to give yourself the credit and be prideful. I think a lot of athletes, it's difficult because a lot of athletes, especially that pursue it in college, kind of validate themselves on their performance. And because of this habit, it can get to a point where they start to do the same thing in academics. While both are important, and I would say that, of course, academics come first because grade cutting is still a thing in college. It's very important to give yourself a credit because a couple years ago, honestly, like maybe like 10 years ago, it was really hard for people like us to just be let alone a student. It was difficult to pursue a higher education, higher degree, or even just go to community college, not just a 4 year. And so to be a first generation doing both, it's something that you should always carry with pride. Carry with pride because you're representing more than just yourself, more than just a school. You're representing a community, your ancestry, your family. And honestly, I mean, I've had bad races and I completely just it hurts my self-esteem so bad. But when I come home and I would tell my family, I tell my mom, well, they're like, no, like you still ran, like you finished. Good job. Like it's still an accomplishment within itself to be doing this while maintaining the ability to continue school and especially to be actually finishing. Recently, I was writing a paper and doing research on how many, like the percentages of Hispanic students with bachelor's degree, and it was a pretty low number. So all these first generation student athletes are increasing that amount,
Yeah.
are increasing the statistics, and honestly, there's nothing more heartwarming than to see those number increase. So honestly, my biggest advice is just literally just do it. Like, take your opportunities, say yes, try new things, and realize that mindset will take you a long way. The body is one thing, but when your mind has a breakthrough, you honestly can reach a lot of things that seem impossible.
That's all for this episode of the First Gen Chronicles. Until next time, I'm your host, Sasha Funes, signing off.